When you think of affordable audiophile headphones, what are your top priorities, other than a sound signature that you like? Is it price, build, accessories, overall looks, brand name, or all of the above? It is patently obvious that the typical name brands such as Sennheiser, Audeze, Beyerdynamic, Meze have little interest in the more affordable market. Yes, all of these companies have something under $400, but these guys seem to focus more and more in the higher price categories. This leaves hi-fi brands to dominate the sub-$500 market. One such brand is Sivga. They've got a number of headphones, all of which have received praise. Sivga's last release was the Phoenix, a $250 dynamic driver, open-back headphone that offers a unique sound signature combined with very good build. Now, Sivga has released a cheaper headphone, which they label the SV021, nicknamed the Robin. This typically sells for about $170, but I've seen this headphone on discount for $150. Sivga sent me the Robin for review. There's some speculation about the Robin and how it compares to the Phoenix. Let's put those speculations aside and take a look at the Robin and how it fits into the Sivga lineup. Sivga says that they use proprietary 50mm dynamic drivers in the Robin. If you are keen on Sivga's headphones, then you will immediately recognize that the Phoenix also has 50mm dynamic drivers. In fact, all of Sivga's headphones seem to have this. In fact, Sivga uses 50mm drivers in their older headphones as well. The SV002, the SV003, and the SV006. Oh boy, that just rolls off the tongue. I don't think that these drivers from these older headphones are the same as the ones in the Robin. What is for sure is that the Robin uses the exact same drivers as the Phoenix. At least that is what Sivga told me. Sivga says that the Robin will provide smooth sound for enduring listening. They claim that the Robin has deep and elastic bass, natural mids, and bright and gorgeous highs. They say that the Robin's wood housing is handmade. Sivga told me that the Robin's tuning is different from the Phoenix. They said that the Robin's sound signature is more, quote, clear, neutral, and not so colored as that of the Phoenix. While Sivga's marketing comments for the Robin are confusing and a little vague, at least they did give me some idea about how it should compare to the Phoenix. The photographs for the Robin do not do it justice. The photos made me think that the Robin has plastic or is unsturdy. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Robin's construction is principally metal and wood. The yokes and headband are metal, the ear cups are wood, real wood, and not the fake wood veneer that some brands use. The ear cups swivel vertically, but they have no horizontal movement at all. This might prove to be an issue for some people. The ear pads are very thick and plush, soft even. I don't know if Sivga uses memory foam here, but these are among the softest ear pads I have ever felt, irrespective of price and manufacturer. The ear pads are also replaceable. You have to twist them clockwise to unlock. This, of course, also means that these ear pads are proprietary. I checked online for any replacement ear pads either from Sivga or a third party and could not find any. The headband is somewhat padded, but it's a far cry from the padding you get in the ear pads. The Robin comes with basic accessories. You get a braided dual-sided cable and a carrying bag, and frankly, that's it. As for comfort, oh boy, look, if there's a more comfortable headphone out there somewhere, I'd be very surprised. The Robin's larger, spacious ear pads engulf my ears. There's so much padding on them that I can barely feel the clamping force. The headphone is light, and despite having little headband padding, I don't feel the weight at all. I can usually wear headphones for up to 3 hours before I need to break. Often I have to adjust them within that period. The Robin is a totally different animal. I never had to adjust them or reposition them, and I can easily wear these headphones for 3 to 4 hours without any difficulty. Overall, the Robin's construction is very good indeed. The metal and wood build is sturdy. The lack of horizontal movement might be an issue for some, but you really won't be able to tell until you put these headphones on. The Robin's comfort is, in my opinion, outstanding. If you're the type that puts great emphasis on comfort, then the Robin's fit will probably make you quite happy. I tested the Robin using various sources. This included my Modi and Liquid Spark stack, the RME 80i2 DAC, the FIO M15, and the hifi Micro IDSD Black Label. I used the stock accessories. I listened to my test playlist on Amazon Music HD. I assure you, the Robin is very easy to drive. You don't need an amplifier for this headphone, but a moderately powerful one will provide plenty of power for peak performance. Sivga says that the Robin has, quote, deep and elastic bass. I have no idea what that means, but my tests clearly indicate that the Robin has elevated bass, particularly sub-bass. In Mountains by Hans Zimmer, there's a rumble from the beginning of the song, and this detail pervades throughout the length of this track. The Robin had no trouble whatsoever recreating the sound. I heard it even at moderate volume. When the crescendo hit, the organ cut through the other instruments. All instruments melded with each other, but never sounded muddy or distorted. The rolling thunder effect at this point was easily audible, but did not drown out the other elements. When the vocals chimed in, they rose from the background until they were about one step ahead of the instruments. In Conquer by Overwork, there's a rolling marble effect at the beginning. This is supposed to pan from right to left to center. The Robin did perfectly recreate the sound of rolling marbles, but the sound of panning did not occur. There are multiple drums in this track, and the Robin clearly presented all of them. Each drum strike did meld a little bit with the subsequent ones. The drum impacts were hard but not piercing. I listened to several hip-hop songs including Pure Water, New Patek, Reel It In, and Uproar. On each occasion, the Robin presented the subwoofer effect clearly. It seemed like the subwoofer was at the other end of a medium-sized room. There was some melding between sub-bass and mid-bass, but no muddiness. The drum strikes were hard. The vocals were 2 steps ahead of the instruments and retained their sparkle. I listened to my Sicario soundtrack. I use these songs to determine if I can hear any sub-bass distortion. The Robin clearly recreated the sub-bass in these tracks, and it was without doubt elevated above neutral. However, even at well above safe volumes, the bass did not distort. Overall, the Robin's bass is elevated. Sub-bass and mid-bass both get an emphasis, but I think that the sub-bass emphasis is probably a little bit greater. Mid-bass impact is hard but not sharp. There is some melding between sub-bass and mid-bass, but no distortion or muddiness. Sivga says that the Robin has natural-sounding mids. This could mean different things to different people. My tests indicate that the Robin has forward mids with noticeable sibilance. In Orla Gartland's song Why Am I Like This, there is natural vocal grain and sibilance mixed into the track. The Robin accentuated both details. The sibilance was somewhat similar to that of the HD560S, which can be fairly harsh depending on the recording. Vocal grain was a bit above neutral. Compared to the Aventone planar, there was an obvious departure, and the planar was actually neutral. Orla's voice was easily 2 steps ahead of the instruments. The drums and guitar appeared to have natural timbre, and their notes melded marginally. The drums were more obvious than the guitar. In Want You Back by Haim, the Robin again demonstrated that it accentuates female sibilance. It is well above neutral. At 8 seconds into the song, the primary singer says the word "we" and drags it out, making it sound gravelly. The Robin clearly recreated this detail. There are 2 backup vocalists in this track, and the Robin had no trouble separating the different voices with their individual tonalities. When the instruments played at maximum, I could still hear all 3 different voices at once. The guitar, piano, drums, and bass all seemed to have correct timbre. All instruments melded a little bit with each other. The vocals were 2 steps ahead of the instruments. In Superposition by Young the Giant, the Robin correctly presented the timbre of the ukulele, drums, and bass. The bass was clearly emphasized above neutral. The male vocalist's voice was 2 steps ahead of the instruments, and his sibilance was also accentuated, though a little bit less than that of female singers. There is a backup singer whose voice is layered beneath the primaries. The Robin was simply not able to recreate this detail. Of course, the vast majority of headphones and IAMs cannot either. Between 1 minute and 10 and 1 minute and 20 seconds, there are sharp intakes of breaths. The Robin recreated this detail without difficulty. Overall, the Robin's mids are a bit forward. Vocals especially stand out among instruments. Depending on the particular recording, you may find that drums and bass are louder than mid-centric instruments, but there is no muddiness. All instruments tend to meld, creating about average clarity. Sivga says that the Robin has bright and gorgeous highs. My experience is that the Robin has slightly elevated treble that is not piercing or harsh. In Scherzo for X-Wings, the Robin recreated the brass and horns clearly, with their characteristic sounds cutting through the mix. Their higher-pitched notes were a bit louder, more emphasized than on the Aventone planar. The emphasis was similar to what I heard on the Allo Audio S4X. There was good clarity among all the instruments. The Robin has width and some depth, but no verticality. This means that instruments sounded further or closer out into the wings, and some appeared a few steps behind, but no sounds ever came from above or below. In Flight from the City, the Robin made the piano sound as if it was 5 feet away. The bassier notes were a little elevated, but not distorted. The cello was smooth and melded slightly with the piano. I could hear the pops and sizzles and the electric buzz effects, which are details recorded into the bottom layer of this song. I could also easily hear the creaking of wood on the pianist's bench and the shifting of the cello's weight. In Take 5 by the Dave Brubeck Quartet, the Robin presented the piano in the right, the drums in the left, the saxophone center, and the bass a step behind. The saxophone sounded smooth and appeared to have close to neutral tonality. The cymbals, however, seemed a bit elevated and clearly were louder than what I heard on the Avitone planar. Each successive strike of the cymbals is a bit different and should result in slightly altered tonality. Some headphones can present this detail, and a lot cannot. The Robin had no trouble resolving this detail. All instruments melded with each other marginally, but I could hear all elements without difficulty. Overall, the treble is a bit accentuated. This region does not get the type of emphasis that the bass does, so while the treble is pushed, it is not a huge deviation from neutral. Cymbals do tend to sound a bit louder than they would on a neutral headphone, but they do not drown out other instruments. Sivga does not mention the Robin's detail ability. In my opinion, the Robin seems to have at least average to above average detail retrieval. While bass is elevated, it does not overwhelm other instruments. You certainly will not get more than average clarity in the bass region. In fact, sub-bass and mid-bass tend to meld, but there is no muddiness or distortion. Details in the mids and treble are clear. Obvious details shine through the mix, and some subtle details are easy to hear. The shifting of cello's weights, creaking of wood, pops and sizzles, electric buzzing, different tonalities of cymbal strikes, multiple vocalists, sharp intakes of breaths, all are details that the Robin presents without struggle. For a more quantitative test, I used the song New Light by Kazuki. This track has layers of details, including the sound of children playing, wind, rustling of grass, synth, piano, and footsteps. I count the number of footsteps I can hear in the first 60 seconds. The Sennheiser HD800S presents 22 footsteps, the Focal Clear 18. The Austrian Audio Hi-X65 presents 16 to 17. The Austrian Audio Hi-X55 presents 16 footsteps. The Hi-Fi Man Sundara, Avitone Planar, Sivga Phoenix, and Beyerdynamic DT1990 present 10 to 11 footsteps. The audeze LCD2 Closed and LCD2 Classic each provide 7 to 8. The Monolith M1070 and M1570 provide 8 to 9, and the older M1060C provides 7 footsteps. The audeze LCD1 and HD6XX each present 6 to 7 footsteps. The Neumann NDH20 presents 5 to 6, and the Sivga Robin presents 9 to 10 footsteps. In my detail test, I used the HD6XX as my average performer. Anything that provides more or less detail than the 6XX will get judged accordingly. Here, it is evident that the Robin has above average performance, at least with New Light. However, I must emphasize that this track is very complex, and while the Robin does present more of a particular detail, the clarity of that detail is not the same as with other headphones that might present the same number of footsteps. For example, even though the Robin and Phoenix tend to present the same or similar number of footsteps, the Robin's rendition is noticeably clearer, sharper, and more crisp than the Phoenix. Sivga does not mention the type of soundstage we should expect from the Robin. However, I would say that the soundstage is easily above average. As with my detail test, my soundstage test uses the HD6XX as my average performer. Anything above or below gets judged accordingly. The audeze Mobius and all Beats headphones have claustrophobic soundstage. The NDH20 and ATH M60X have below average soundstage. The HD6XX and LCD1 have average soundstage. The Sivga Phoenix and Emotiva GR1 are average to maybe above average depending on the particular recording. The Hi-Fi Man Sundara, Avitone Planar, Austrian Audio Hi-X55 and X65, and the LCD2 Classic have above average soundstage. The Hi-Fi Man Diva has wide soundstage. The HD800S has super wide soundstage. The Robin soundstage appears to be above average. It does not rival what you would hear on the Sundara, but it is a clear difference from the Phoenix and the GR1. Keep in mind that the ear pads you use and your original recording have a lot to do with soundstage perception. Sivga's description of the Robin is very confusing and vague. I find that's the case with a lot of companies. For one reason or another, you really don't have a good idea of what the product is supposed to do. With the Robin, Sivga uses the term elastic bass, a phrase that is so gobbledygook that it's not even worth complaining about. Sivga promises natural mids and bright highs. Well, I don't think there's much here to go off of. You might get the idea that the Robin is V-shaped. I think generally, yes, that is somewhat correct, but that's really not the full story. The Robin does have a considerable sub-bass emphasis, well above neutral. Mid-bass has a more moderate emphasis in comparison. The bass has average clarity and transients. The mids are forward. There's at least one frequency response graph online of the Robin, and that shows a very prominent V-shaped signature. Based off of the graph alone, you might get the idea that the mids are recessed, but that's really not the experience. Vocals are never hidden. In fact, they are always the head of instruments. And even though bass is emphasized, drums never drown out the other elements in a mix. Sivga says the Robin has natural mids. I don't know what they mean by that, and this terminology will have a different impression on different people. However, timbre of instruments always seems to be correct, vocals seem to be full and do not sound distant, but vocals, both male and female, also have a noticeable sibilance push. The treble has a slight bump. I wouldn't call this aggressive or bright. Frankly, I think that the Robin's rendition of treble is similar to that of the Allo Audio S4X. Treble instruments are not harsh or peaky. They are clear. But cymbals do tend to sound a bit emphasized in comparison. It's not nearly as distracting as it was on the Cal SE or the Verum 1. The Robin has above average detail and soundstage. In my opinion, the Robin has a W-shaped sound signature. The frequency response graph may not suggest that, but I've never advocated using measurements as the sole basis of a review. FR graphs are helpful, but not gospel. Now, there is one aspect about the Robin's marketing that I want to take issue with. It's the promise that this headphone has smooth sound. No, I don't think so. I'm sorry, but I have heard smooth sound signatures before, and I would not put the Robin in that category. To me, the original Audeze LCD2 Phasor, the Harmonic Dyne Zeus, the KB Ear OS1 Pro, and Final Audio B2 sound smooth. The Robin does not, and for one very particular reason: the vocal sibilance. Now, this may not be an issue for many people, and it will clearly depend a lot on the original recording, but the other products I just mentioned always sound smooth, irrespective of the recording. The Robin doesn't. If your music has vocal sibilance, then this headphone will tend to accentuate that detail, and this may be a bit unpleasant to some people. It's important to compare products as often as possible so that we know how everything fits. Today's most amazing headphone will be lost in tomorrow's hype. Here, I will compare the Robin to the Phoenix, the HT6XX, and the Fidelio X2 HR. I plugged each headphone into my passive AB switch, which was connected to my Army ADI2 DAC. I repeated these tests with the Soundcause LA-QXD1 connected to my Sterling HPA4. I listened to my test playlist on Amazon Music HD. I used the stock accessories and tried to volume match as best as I could. The Phoenix seems to have similar bass response as the Robin. It's a bit hard to tell because of one major factor. The Robin is clearer in the bass region. Separation between sub-bass and mid-bass is more obvious on the Robin. Transients is a little bit faster on the Robin. But going back and forth, I got the distinct impression that both headphones had elevated bass that was similar in tuning. Mid-bass slam was a bit harder on the Phoenix, but the Robin was overall clearer. The mids are different. The Phoenix has more intimate vocals than the Robin. The Robin has more sibilance and vocal grain emphasis. The Phoenix accentuates sibilance as well, but not as much as the Robin. The Robin has overall clearer mids and greater separation of mid-centric instruments. Vocals stand out further ahead of instruments on the Robin. Decay in this region is slower on the Phoenix. Timbre of instruments seem to be about the same on both headphones. Treble seems to have a similar amount of emphasis on both headphones. Timbre of treble instruments was the same, but the Robin was clearer and had greater separation. Instrument placement was easier to perceive on the Robin. Detail retrieval is similar, but the Robin has a wider soundstage. The HD6XX has less sub-bass emphasis than the Robin. In fact, going back and forth, the 6XX appeared to have a roll-off in comparison. The Robin had greater separation between sub-bass and mid-bass and slightly faster transients. Mid-bass slam was similar, however. The meze response is closer to neutral on the 6XX. Both headphones accentuate vocal sibilance, but the 6XX has a marginal emphasis while the Robin has a more prominent one. Vocal grain is smoother on the 6XX. Vocals are noticeably closer to the ears on the 6XX. Clarity overall in the mids region is greater on the Robin, as is separation of instruments. The treble is also different on these headphones. The 6XX seems to have closer to neutral presentation with a roll-off in the upper treble region. The Robin, in contrast, has a slight emphasis in the mid to upper treble area. Clarity and separation is greater on the Robin. The 6XX makes all instruments sound closer to the ears. The Robin has considerably wider soundstage and more detailed retrieval. The X2HR has a sub-bass roll-off compared to the Robin. Transient seems to be about the same. Separation between sub-bass and mid-bass is a bit clearer on the Robin. Mid-bass impact is harder on the Robin. Bass clarity is noticeably greater on the Robin. The meze response is different, but also has similarities. Both the X2 and Robin accentuate vocal grain and sibilance. Both headphones appear to push sibilance about the same amount, but vocal grain might be marginally smoother on the X2. Timbre of instruments is the same, but decay is a little bit faster on the Robin. Clarity and separation of instruments is greater on the Robin. The X2 places vocals closer to the ears. The treble response is similar on these headphones. Both appear to have emphasis in the mid to upper treble region, and the energy seems very closely related. However, the Robin is clearer and separates treble instruments more than the X2. The X2 places instruments closer to the ears. The Robin has wider soundstage, more clarity, and greater detail retrieval. Every time I do comparisons, it helps me understand where new gear fits into the expanding list of options. Sometimes the differences are non-existent, sometimes differences are huge, and sometimes they're, kinda there. Here, it is evident that the Robin has a very different headphone experience from the competition. Compared to the Phoenix, the Robin is a noticeable departure in a number of ways. The same can be said for the HD6XX and the X2HR. If you have any of these three alternatives, then the Robin will provide a different experience. For example, the Phoenix, X2, and 6XX all are warmer sounding headphones than the Robin. The Phoenix, when compared directly to the 6XX and the X2, is not as darkly tuned, but the general signature is prevalent in all three competitors. While the X2 and 6XX are complementary in their warmer sound signature, they're not the same. For example, the 6XX has a bit more bass and smoother vocals than the X2. The X2 has more treble energy with a bit more clarity overall. As you go back and forth among these four headphones, you start to find aspects one does differently than the others. You also find similarities. Ultimately, there's no identical headphone. They're all simply different. And being different, they will appeal to some group while not appealing to others. There is no perfect headphone or IEM or DAC or amplifier. There's only that which works for you. As always, perhaps some or none of the headphones we spoke of here would be to your liking. When Sivga released the Phoenix, it set a new standard for hi-fi, in my opinion. For about $250, you got excellent build, good accessories, and a fairly unique sound signature. There was no guarantee that you would like it, but it was different from the competition in the same price category. Different is good. I am not a proponent of identical products. I do not want the same sound signature. The joy of listening to music is just that, actually listening to music. How you experience your content is far more important than the devices you use. The last thing I want is a world where we're stuck with a Harman target curve, or DACs and amps that are completely neutral. Variety is the spice of life. So, for Sivga to have released the Phoenix was a big step in bringing a bit of affordable spice to audiophiles. Now, with the Robin, Sivga has to pass the same test. Is the Robin worthy of consideration? Well, Sivga used the same drivers in the Robin and the Phoenix. You might have expected the same sound signature as a result. After all, I'm sure that there would be some people who would want a cheaper copy of the Phoenix, but that's not what we get. Instead, the Robin is indeed a noticeable departure from the Phoenix. The Robin has similar bass response, but more clarity, wider soundstage, and greater instrument separation, and about the same amount of detail as the Phoenix. But there's also some give and take. For instance, the Robin has more vocal sibilants and a less adjustable fit. Overall, the Robin and Phoenix do not sound alike. Whatever you may think of Sivga, they did in fact create something different from the previous product. I applaud that. Audeze, Sennheiser, Beyerdynamic, and many other brands refuse to provide tangible differences among the ocean of products they sell. They could learn a few things from their hi-fi counterparts. This brings us to value. Yes, I think the Robin is value at $150. I hope that Sivga keeps this price and does not revert to the $170 MSRP, but frankly, even at $170, I would say that the Robin is value. Here, with the Robin, you get a noticeable change in sound signature from the Phoenix. The Robin is in fact clearer with wider soundstage than the HD6XX and the X2HR, two headphones that are popular within the Robin's price bracket. While the 6XX and X2 provide a warmer sound signature with intimate vocals, the Robin presents a different picture of your music. The Robin is not a perfect headphone. The vocal sibilance is going to cause issues for some people. Yes, you can tame it with EQ, and yes, your music and volume will play major roles in the experience. But anybody who hates sibilance or treble is going to be rather unhappy with the Robin, and frankly also with the X2HR, the HD560S, and many other IEMs and headphones. The question is whether the Robin fits into the collection you may already have. I cannot answer that for you. I cannot tell you what to buy. But I can confirm that if you've heard the X2, the HD6XX, or the Phoenix, then the Robin will be something quite different. With the Robin, Sivga gives you an option of experiencing your music differently than you would with other similarly priced headphones and deservingly popular products too. So yes, I think the Robin is worth serious consideration. It may not be your perfect headphone, but it's definitely a good option among many others.